manager, and I'm very interested more in holistic nutrition, and that's really my background. So last week we went through a whole conversation about eating more plants for cancer prevention, and this was the plate I shared, just to make sure that we know that all of these groups comprise plant-based eating. So not just eating fruits and vegetables, but the beans and legumes, the nuts and the seeds. We talked a little about whole soy. And the big thing about all of these foods, and I mentioned it last week, is that they all have fiber, which is so important for our blood sugar levels, for our immune system, for our gut health. It actually reduces disease. And so that's why we really promote more eating of plants in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons, but just for time's sake, that's all I'm going to say. When we talked about meals last week, I said you have to have these three things. We need to have proteins, fibers, and fat. And the word carb is not here because carbs can be simple carbs or they can be the complex carbs. All our plant groups have complex carbohydrates. So they slow down the digestion in the system, which helps us keep ourselves full. It helps us not having the blood sugar spikes. And that's why this is so important when we're eating a plant-based meal, that we have all these things going on. So tonight we're going to make several things. I think I'll have enough time to whip all this up really quick, but we're going to go backwards and we're going to do a black bean burger that I sent a link to, but I don't have it here with the recipes on the slide. And the reason being is I wanted to share with you that eating sweet potatoes are a slow digestive carb, and they're so versatile. So if you never eat a sweet potato, or maybe your condition doesn't allow it, I just share that these are really good replacements for eating white potatoes. There's a lot of more nutritional value, complex carbohydrate, and they're versatile because in this macro bowl, you can roast them and use them in a macro bowl where you're eating a lot of different things with dressing like an open salad. You can actually put them in a burrito, which is kind of interesting. I've never used to do that, but if you roast them, you can throw them in a burrito, or you can bake them and then smash down the inside in a burrito. So it's just like, if you're new to this, sweet potatoes there's so many things you can do. You can eat a sweet potato by itself and add stuff to it. So tonight we were going to make a black bean sweet potato burger. And I think I can get these slides to you ladies if you're interested in all these recipes, because we're not making all of them. I just wanted to give you ideas on what you can do with sweet potatoes.
I'm going to get my notebook.
Yeah, sure. And the other thing we're going to talk about is kale and having a garlicky kale salad. It's just another way of eating salad without eating lettuce. We're eating kale, which is a dark leafy green that's so vital for cancer prevention and disease prevention. Dressing we're going to make at home because, again, homemade dressings are so easy. We don't need to buy stuff in bottles if we cannot. You know, bottles sometimes have a lot more preservatives, sugars, salts, oils that are, maybe denatured. So we want to try to make more things at home. The bottom line is if you can cook at home, the better. And we're going to talk about a salad. And then we're going to talk about breakfast. So I'm going to help you tonight. If you're cooking with me or if not, take notes. We're going to make some different breakfasts, 2 of them really easy that you can throw together. So easy that you won't know what hit you. So I'm going to do that tonight. And I think that's the only slides I had here. I wanted to share this one really quick, that I'm also, for my role at cancer at the hospital,
Nicole?
I do teach a cancer. Yeah.
We're not seeing the slides.
Oh, you don't see that? Were you seeing the other ones or no?
No, we weren't seeing any slides. I was waiting. I thought you hadn't started sharing them yet.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that. I thought y'all were seeing them. Are you seeing them now?
Yes.
I must not hit the right button. Okay, see, that's important. Thank you. Well, let me go back. Let's go back to the very beginning.
You were describing it in such detail. I didn't feel like I was missing anything.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, me neither. Great. Okay. Well, let me just go to the things real quick. So that was the plate. This was what we talked about last week. And then this was the recipes. And again, they're on the slides, but I'm going to take the slides down and just do full screen. And I believe Lauren has all these. So she's going to send these to you, or she already did, perhaps. Okay. Yeah. So we just got some stuff going on here. And that's it. The only thing I wanted to mention was I am teaching my own cancer prevention series as well on Zoom all month long. And so every Wednesday at 12:30, we are doing a conversation too, because it's so important. So tomorrow we're going to talk about stress and anti-inflammatory foods. We're going
Oh,
to talk about physical movement and mindset on week 3. And then the last week of the month, environment, toxins, and sleep patterns to really prevent disease. And before I end this slide set, I'm doing a plant-based baking basics every night at 7 o'clock this month on Thursday, starting this week, because I love to eat sweets, as me and Lauren were talking about. We like dessert, and there's a way to do it with healthier options. Again, instead of going to the packaged processed foods, we can make stuff at home and it's better that way. So you guys are more than welcome to join me on any of those classes. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and get back to my full screen so I can see what I'm doing. Yeah, everybody's ready. Okay, let's start with the dinner first, because I guess I can try to get this in the oven perhaps. So sweet potatoes, so easy to buy. They're everywhere. They're all year round. Very versatile. I tend to use a potato scrubber and wash the outside, regardless of whether I'm eating the skin or not. But the skin is really good full of fiber and full of minerals because it comes from the ground and it's just the part that is close to the soil. So we don't really want to throw the skin away unless absolutely necessary. And what I did was I baked a sweet potato in the oven, and then I went ahead and put in the sweet potato in my bowl without the skin. So it's a sweet potato that's cooked in my bowl. And I'm actually making half of this recipe. So this is about a half a cup of a sweet potato. I also had canned low sodium beans, black beans, that I rinsed off. So this is about a half a cup of black beans. So what we're going to do is I'm using a potato masher. You can use a fork. It doesn't do as good of a job. Or you can do as a potato. This is a pastry blender, I'm sorry. Or you can use a potato masher. And we're just going to mash we want to mash the beans down so that they're more palatable and look more like a burger form than just beans by themselves. So I'm going to mash all these in here. Black beans, we talked about, again, beans and legumes are full of iron and protein and good fiber. So, but there are some conditions when we talk about this kind of eating. I mentioned this last week. Not everybody can eat all of these things. I know, Linda, we talked a little bit about, you have different diet needs. I'm not trying to advocate that everybody has to eat all of these things. We're just talking about general population for plant-based eating, and then we have to tweak it to what works for us, because some people can't really do well on grains. So, this is just the evidence-based overall conversation. And then you have to tweak it based on your condition. The bottom line is we want you to cook more at home and we want you to eat more plants. That's really the bottom line. All right, so just quickly, kind of more, like I said, we've kind of mashed this down to a palatable form for our burger. Okay, so with that, we're going to make a flax egg. So I don't know if you guys have made flax eggs before, but in plant-based baking, we don't typically use eggs, dairy eggs. We're going to use ground flaxseed meal. You have to grind out flaxseed for it to absorb in the body, or else it's just going to pass through. So I have 1 tablespoon of flax meal, and I'm going to use 2.5 to 3, no more than 2.5 to 3 tablespoons of water. Italian people don't typically measure. So what I'm doing is I'm really making sure there's water on top of my flax. My sisters hate that I don't measure. And what's going to happen is very quickly, this is going to start to come together and become very gelatinous and very gooey. It's very quick. It happens within 5 minutes. And that binds together my baked goods. And it also binds together dinner, things like this that I'm actually making into a patty. So typically we would let that just sit and bind. Flaxseed is awesome because it has omega-3 fatty acids, which are awesome for bringing down inflammation in the body. There's a lot of fiber in flax seeds. Talk again about the calcium and iron, and when you talk about seeds, and also the fact that they are phytoestrogens. So, there's some conversation about, breast cancer and eating estrogens.
Mm-hmm.
These are plant estrogens, so it's not the same form of a hormone from an animal. And so unless you're eating a ton of phytoestrogens, it's not really been seen as a problem. But again, some people are cautious. So I'm not saying you have to eat these. There's other things you can do in place of a flax egg.
Did
I'm
you
going to
say
add
that?
this. Yeah, pardon me?
Did you say that replaced an egg?
Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh.
Okay.
So 1 flax egg, 1 tablespoon to 2.5 tablespoons of water is 1 egg. So we're going to add that to our batter along with some cumin. Cumin comes from the parsley family, which I thought was interesting. I didn't know that. And all of our spices are so good for getting rid of microbes and bacteria and viruses in the body. They're very potent. So we want to really use these in our healthy cooking. And that's why healthy cooking can taste terrible if you don't season it well. Cumin is a good thing to have on hand, and it really goes good with sweet potatoes and black beans. So because I'm making half the recipe, I'm only going to use half a tablespoon. Typically, you would use a full tablespoon with a full can of beans and one cup of mashed sweet potato. Spices don't last forever. So if you don't smell your spice, it's not good anymore, and it's not going to be useful in your cooking. There's going to be no properties to it. So you want to keep these in the freezer if you don't use them often. Buy smaller amounts. You can buy them whole and grind them in a coffee grinder, whatever you choose to do to keep them fresh. Smoked paprika is another flavoring that I've never used before in my life till I made these burgers. And it really gives it that fiery, kind of meaty flavoring that we miss when we don't eat meat. So I grew up on paprika, but not smoked. So again, we're going to use about half a tablespoon. And because I'm running out, I'm going to hit that on there and get rid of that. You definitely want sea salt in here. I use sea salt. I use pink Himalayan sea salt. I want to have salt that has minerals in it. And iodized salt, all the minerals are taken out. And all they do is add some iodine back in there with some non-caking ingredient. That's not whole. I'm trying to eat things that man didn't start messing with. So I buy sea salt. All right, so that's our base. Our flax egg, our potato, our black beans, 2 different spices. We've got some salt in here. And then the last thing we're going to do is add a flour. I don't typically use glutinous flours in my baking. If you guys have whole wheat flour, that's great. If you have oat flour, that's good. You can even make oat flour in a blender. I'm using almond flour, and this is a very fine almond flour. There's almond meal on the market. This is more of a very fine almond flour that has no gluten in it. So it's not really binding in that respect, but what I like about it is you're not going to taste it because it's very mild. You don't want something strong in a burger recipe. And the other thing we're going to add is some onion.
How much flour? How much flour did you do?
Thank you. This was a half a cup for a half a recipe, but if you did the whole recipe, you're going to use a full cup.
Okay.
And then the recipe calls for grated onion. You can actually grate an onion using a grater. You can grate an onion and just grate the onion. So that's why you're not having big chunks in your burger. It's just a little more time consuming. I don't typically need to do that. I like to just go ahead and chop up an onion as fine as I can. So I just cut up about a 1/4 cup of a sweet onion, and I made it as fine as possible so that I can add that and it's not going to be very chunky. This is just for me anyway. So, I'm not as picky, but if you want, your guests over and you want to be more palatable, you might want to grate an onion, and you would use about a half an onion for a full recipe. And that's really it. It's a very, very simple recipe. If you found that your recipe looks a little too mushy, like, it's not going to come together well, you can add more flour. So you can start with your cup and then go for more if you felt like it. But I really never felt like I've needed to when I made this recipe. It seems to come together really easy. We're talking about a ton of fiber, and this is, very filling. So that's our batter. It's really easy. And then you're just going to take a spoon and make the size of burgers you want. You can do sliders, or you can do full-size burgers. A full batch would make about 6 full-size burgers. So they're really easy. They just come together that easy. I like to put parchment-lined paper on my aluminum. Again, for cancer prevention, we're getting away from heavy metal. We don't want to cook on metal unless it's stainless steel. But this is an old, yucky aluminum baking tray. So I'm going to put parchment paper down to save myself from getting that leaching into my food. And then you're going to cook this on 375 for about 30 minutes. You can flip the burgers halfway. I've noticed sometimes that the burgers start falling apart when I'm cooking them and they're hard to flip. but when they start cooling off, they seem to come together and they're fine. So
Okay.
I'm not too concerned that I didn't add enough flour. They usually are, they taste fine. The other thing that I like to eat on my burgers, instead of making them in bread and buns, I buy romaine lettuce or Bibb lettuce. To get more nutrient value in my meal, I want to eat it on lettuce. You can make a lettuce bun. And that way you have, again, you're getting your, your grains in there, your garlicky grains and your lettuce. It also just really is nice flavor profile than always having bread. So that's how you make your burger. Any questions on those burgers? All right, so that was a very, very easy recipe. You can freeze those in the freezer if you guys want to put them in the freezer. You can cook them halfway and then freeze them. That way they don't dry out, or you can just go ahead and cook them the whole way and freeze them. You could probably freeze them uncooked and then just go ahead and put them in the freezer that way and then cook them later. I haven't tried that option. Usually they go pretty quick in this house. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is talk about kale. You guys, are any of you kale lovers or kale haters? Or never had kale?
The thought of it just does not sound good to me.
No.
Okay, exactly, right? Well, hopefully the way you dress it up and the way you prepare it might be better if you want to try it. There are different kales on the market. There's this kale that I love called dinosaur kale. It's long and easy to work with. Lacinato was another name for it. And there's also curly kale, which has a lot of curls in the leaves.
That's
That's
what
what
I
I've
think of as kale. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, I like that kale. They're all good. The problem I had with that kale is when I tried to wash it, a lot of bugs kept coming out of the curls and I couldn't get them clean enough. So I got disgusted and I thought, I'm not buying that anymore. But this kale is easy to wash. And when I wash my produce, I take a bowl like I showed you with it's kind of a bowl right here. I add lukewarm water to it and some white vinegar. White vinegar kills things. We know it's a good cleaner in the house. So a splash of vinegar in my bowl of water, and I wash all my produce that way, all my vegetables, all my fruit, berries, and I make sure that I even wash the outside of like a butternut squash because we don't know where that stuff's been.
That's right.
Right. So once I've washed my kale, I then take the stem of this type of kale and I hold it with one hand and I hold the leaves with another hand and I pull the leaf off of the kale. This part's really hard to eat. So if your dog's like this or you have a good blender, you can use it that way, but I throw it away. And then we've got our leaf. And so very easily after I've washed it, you can really just take your hands and do this. And you don't have to go through the whole process of cutting that up and using a knife. And so then we have a nice big bowl of chopped up kale. It's not a really, thing that people like to eat because it's very bitter. If you're making a smoothie with dark leafy greens, this is one that you don't want to do until you're advanced with drinking that stuff because this is a little stronger in flavor. I understand that. So, but kale is not like spinach. It's a little bit higher in nutritional profiling. And because it's considered the dark leafy green family, there's other components to it that's really good for you. So what I do is what I call massaging my kale. Have you guys heard that term before? Other than your body? Okay. Yeah, we're going to get our hands in this. Italians like to cook with our hands. A little bit of salt on my kale. And I'm taking my hands and what I'm going to do is just start loving on my kale. I'm going to massage this little guy and get some frustrations out. What I'm doing is breaking down the fibers. These are so hardy. These leaves are not fun to eat raw. That's partly why people don't like to eat it because it's very unpleasant. What is it doing in your stomach? If you can't digest fiber very well, that's not going to probably be good on your gut. So as you start massaging this, it breaks down the fibers. My kale starts to shrink in size. This bowl will shrink down quite considerably. And the leaves will get very, very, very green. I don't know if you can tell how beautiful in color my kale is turning, but it just gets really bright green. Salt releases some water in my kale. And I'm kind of quote unquote cooking my kale with my hands and some salt. You do this with cabbage. If it's too fibrous, you can also do this with cabbage. It's a great technique for these hardy leaves. So, once I've got this going on, I could do this for a long time, but I haven't even done it really a minute, and it's changed the whole texture of my lettuce. So that makes it more palatable. So I don't know if you can tell the difference,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, and it's softer, so much softer to eat now. I won't, it won't be so unpalatable. So that's massaging kale, and that's something that in case you're gonna try kale, I would highly recommend before you eat it raw. The next thing we're going to do is make a dressing to go with that. I tried this at Whole Foods a long time ago on their prepared food section. When I used to go to Whole Foods and they had all that buffet stuff out, they had a really delicious kale called Garlicky Kale that was so yummy. And I found a copycat recipe of how to make the dressing, and I just loved it. It's delicious. So garlic is such a good antiviral and antibacterial ingredient to add at least eat once a day, and raw even better than cooked. But the whole onion family are good for cancer prevention. So your onions, your leeks, your scallions, your chives, your garlic, really, really something we need to include in our diet every day. So I have something called a garlic press that makes my life so much easier, right? You put your cloves in here and literally press out the garlic. It minces it. Just chop that stuff off with a knife, and it just makes life easy. So for this recipe, the garlicky kale dressing, it calls for 2 garlic cloves, which I've already done. To save time, I've kind of made the dressing, but I'm going to go through it. Then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of tahini. So tahini is a sesame seed butter. This is just roasted sesame seeds. We don't want to add any kind of salts or oils to our products if we can find them without all that in there. And this is not a butter that you're going to want to just like put on toast or something. It's very strong. I mean, they use this for hummus and Middle Eastern food, but it's got calcium and iron. Sesame seeds are really a good, again, thing to add to our diet. So the butter part is lovely. It makes things creamy as well. So I use it in my tuna fish. I eat tuna fish out of the can, and I like to add tahini instead of mayonnaise. Liquid aminos. This is very salty. I don't know if you guys have ever had liquid aminos before, but 2 tablespoons are required for this recipe with these. You can use soy sauce. Tamari is a wheat-free soy sauce. All of those are very salty, umami kinds of flavoring, which again, umami means that when we're eating meat, we get a certain sensation from that. And once we're not eating meat anymore, we are looking for those flavor profiles. And this little guy gives that to us because it's very salty. So if you're concerned about salt, I wouldn't add the full 2 tablespoons. And liquid aminos comes from a soybean. So again, if you're staying away from soy, you don't have to use this. You can use coconut aminos, which is also coconut. So this is the amino properties from the soy. It's just watered down soybeans. So we're going to use 2 tablespoons of that. We're going to use 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, another thing that's really good pantry stable to have for your dressings. We want to make sure when we buy this guy that it's got what they call a mother in it. It's floating around. There's some kind of dark stuff at the bottom because that means that it's fermented, and fermented foods are so good for gut bacteria. We want to get good, healthy gut bacteria. And the only way to do that is fermented foods that have been aged and have bacteria in them. So you want to make sure it says unpasteurized on it and unfiltered. That means that it's not been heated, and you're going to get all those good properties. So we added 2 tablespoons of this to our dressing. And then we added some lemon juice. I don't know if you guys know, but half a lemon is 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, or 1/8 a cup. So you don't even have to measure a half. You can just squirt it in here without the seeds. Or if you want to use the whole thing, that's 1/4 cup of lemon juice. That's just a little culinary tidbit. So you don't have to measure your lemon. The last thing I added to this was 4 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. And we talked about this very briefly last week. What is this stuff? If you're a plant-based eater, this is a very culinary seasoning we want to have in our diet because it has a lot of B compounds, a lot of B vitamins. If you don't eat any animal protein at all, no eggs, no meats, this has B12, which is actually the only non-animal food that has a B12, active B12 vitamin in it. It's a complete amino acid, a complete profile. We talked about amino acids last week, that all plants don't have all the amino acids. This guy does. And he has so 3 grams of protein for a tablespoon. Yeah, so this is a really good culinary something to add to your food. It's great to put in dressings. It tastes like cheese alternative. You can put it on broccoli. I put it into soups and thicken my soups, or even tomato sauce. it really just adds more of that flavor we're looking for when we don't eat meat, but it has a lot of good properties to it. I don't know where I found this at Trader Joe's. I don't know if they have them at every store. Publix, I think, has it. And it looks like fish food. It looks like little yellow cheese flakes. So it's an inactivated yeast that came from sugar beet, and molasses. That's where we usually harvest this stuff from. So once I put all my stuff in here, I added a lot of water because it needs to be thinned down so that we have a nice dressing. And then we're going to just add this to our kale and just mix it up. So if you don't like kale, you can add this dressing to spring mix. My sister and me usually make this dressing, and then we just kind of keep it in our refrigerator, and we use it for our salad. Because again, the nutritional components of what we're eating are so good. And again, making your dressings takes a little more than 10 minutes instead of buying a bottled dressing. So again, I just say try to cook more at home if you can, because those dressings on the market add a lot of oils and a lot of sugars to preserve them and a lot of salt.
Mhm.
So just real easy. So that's my salad. Yeah.
Can you keep that in the refrigerator, that dressing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've kept it in there for, maybe 1 to 2 weeks at most.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't have to toss it right away. I'm going to do this because this is my lunch tomorrow, but you can add some stuff to this salad too. Yeah.
If you wanted to make a lot of it, so you would have it on hand for salad tomorrow or the next day.
Right. It makes a lot. That one serving I showed you made a lot, but you can double the recipe absolutely and have a bunch of it. It's delicious. It's very garlicky. So again, you have to like garlic, but good. It's just really good. So this salad doesn't have any other textures going on. You could add sunflower seeds to this. I don't know how a sweet would be, like if you did a cranberry or a raisin, how that would work with this profile, but a little maybe chopped apple. It's up to you. Sometimes, these salads need a little more than just the lettuce and the dressing. You could also add some hemp seeds, which we talked about last week. They're a really good protein source for plant-based eaters. So those are just some options for you for the salad. One of the recipes I think I sent you, I can't remember. I'm not going to make one, but using these wide-mouthed mason jars are great for quick meals. So there's a lot of recipes on the website called mason jar salads. And we could take our dressing and add that to the bottom of this and then layer this with different things so that we can take this on the road. We could have put the garlicky kale at the bottom and then added some chickpeas and some sunflower seeds and then our green on the top and take it with me. I can make 4 of these at one time. And then when I go to eat it, I'll turn it over and the dressing will come out onto the salad and I can eat it on the plate that way. So these are great investments for like I go to work and I can make salads, take them to go. So there's a lot of websites out there for those recipes. The next thing we're going to go and shift our gears now is going back to breakfast. So I'm going to show you a really nice overnight oat jar. Does anybody currently eat overnight oats?
No, I just eat good old Quaker instant oatmeal.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, and rolled oats can be quick and instant, or they can be steel cut, which takes longer. These are just rolled.
Uh-huh.
What I'm doing is using a smaller mason jar salad. This is 16 ounces. And overnight oats is a great thing to add to your repertoire if you don't have time for breakfast, but like to eat breakfast and you want something quick. They take me about 10 minutes to prepare at night and I have breakfast in the morning. So basically what I'm doing with this one, and I sent the recipe, is I took a banana, and I like the riper bananas because they're sweeter. Therefore, I do not add other sugars to this. I just use a ripe banana. Bananas, though, can be varied in size. So this whole banana is pretty large. It's like a medium-sized banana. This is about 2 servings of fruit. So if you ate this whole thing, you're getting 2 servings of fruit for that day. I try to buy the bananas smaller just because I'd rather eat the whole thing, or I cut it in half. So I cut this banana in half tonight, and I'm using only half of this banana in my overnight oat. That's all I needed. So I went ahead and I already did some of this just for time, but I've mashed my half banana with a fork in my mason jar, and then I've added some almond butter. When you're trying to buy nuts and seed butters, you want to make sure there's no salts added, no sugars added, no more oils added if possible. This is just roasted almonds, I believe, or raw almonds. That's it. So typically I have to stir this when I buy it, and then you don't have to stir it again. It's just making sure the oils come together with the nuts. I added a tablespoon of a nut butter to this with my banana. I love cinnamon. It stabilizes blood sugar. I added a bunch of cinnamon. You can use a 1/4 teaspoon. I used about a teaspoon of cinnamon to my overnight oats. The next thing I'm going to add to this are chia seeds. If you're new again at plant-based eating, this is a good staple to have. These things last forever in the fridge. I keep them in a mason jar, again, trying to get away from plastics. And I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of chia seeds to my overnight oat jar. These guys retain about 10 times the weight in water. So they blow up and expand in a liquid. There's something out there called chia pudding that people are eating because it makes a great pudding. Kind of like the flaxseed, it comes very gelatinous when you add water to it. So it's really calming for the gut too. Chia seeds are also high in dietary fiber. They're omega-3 fatty acids, which bring down inflammation in the body. And they have calcium and iron and some protein. So a great thing to add to breakfast. We're also going to add to this my oats. So I'm adding a 1/4 cup of rolled oats. You can add a 1/3 cup. You can add as much or a little as you want. I'm only going to do a 1/4 cup. And then I'm going to just top it off with some unsweetened almond milk. Again, when you're buying these non-dairy milks, you want to make sure you're not getting lots of extra added sugars. A lot of these milks have a lot of sugar. So we want to avoid adding added sugars if we can. So unsweetened milk, that's all you need. Now, if you felt like this wasn't sweet enough when you go to eat it, you could add a little bit of maple syrup or something to it. But because you're using a ripe banana, you really get a lot of sweetness with this and you don't need to add anything. And I'm just going to mix this up. Make sure everything kind of gets blended pretty well. And I'm going to put a lid on it, and that's really all I need to do with my mason jar. The next morning when I get it, it should be pretty thick. All the liquid will be pretty much congealed. It's delicious. So we'll mix it again in the morning, and then you can either put this in the microwave if you want to heat it up. You can dump it out if you want it hot on the stove. Put it in the. I like them cold. I don't really heat it up. But you can add some berries to the top of that. You can add some walnuts if you want more texture. There's so many things you can do with these, and there's a million recipes for overnight oats. A million. So that's a very easy thing to do. The last thing we're going to do tonight is make a breakfast cookie because it's so easy. It's 3 ingredients. So I'm going to take my half of my banana because it's nice and ripe and sweet. And I'm going to mash it with a fork. And again, this recipe calls for 1 banana. So if I use the whole banana, that would be the whole recipe. But I'm using half because I didn't have another ripe half. And I'm a party of 1 over here. So I make these all the time and I put them in the refrigerator. But we're just going to mash up our banana in our bowl. And we're using a lot of the same kinds of ingredients, same profile. I'm using a 1/2 cup of rolled oats. If I used a full banana, I would use a 1 cup of oats. Dump that in there. I'm going to add cinnamon just because I feel like it, but again, you can add whatever you want. And then I'm going to go back to my nut butter and add a tablespoon of this. Now, because I used half of the recipe, I'll probably do a little less than a full tablespoon. But it's not going to mess up the recipe really all that much. These are really easy to throw together. You can put raisins or cranberries in here, walnuts. You can add chia seeds to this if you wanted to. I'm not going to. You don't need any liquid in these. You don't need any sodium in this. You don't need to add any extra salt. So we're done with the salt. What I like though is some chocolate chips. I'm a chocolate girl, so I'm adding some dark chocolate. Did you know that dark chocolate's good for your heart?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for the heart. It's high in antioxidants if you buy the chips that are 70% or more cacao.
Yeah,
So
got one that's
yeah,
82%, I think.
Excellent. So yeah, that's good heart health antioxidant and good for cancer prevention.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really easy. I mean, we're just mixing up, like I said, those 3 ingredients. I'm adding a little chocolate chip. I added cinnamon because I just think it goes really well with this cookie. If you wanted this to be more of a meal, if you have some protein powder that you want to add, that's not going to change the texture or the flavor too much, you could do some of that too and make it more of like a cookie meal, a breakfast cookie that's a meal. But I just, again, think this is fun because it's a really healthy snack. And without the chip, it's no added sugar, but because I added some dark chocolate chips, there's a little bit of added sugar to this. So that's really my cookie. And again, I'm getting out a sheet. Again, I'm gonna put parchment paper on my sheet, again, to stay away from cooking on metal. And I made half a recipe. So this makes about 4 nice sized cookies. You kind of have to mash them down though. They will not really fall down on their own in the oven. They don't cook down. So I just take my little guy and mash it down. And that's good. I get 4 really nice cookies out of this. It takes about 10 minutes to cook in the oven, and I cook it at 350. And really, it's very fast cooked. So I kind of have to watch them. They'll get nice and brown in the oven. And then that's it. That is my cookie. So real
That was
simple.
good.
Oh,
Yeah,
it does
they are.
look good.
I love oatmeal cookies, and this is a really easy thing to do. So that, my friends, is my cookie. So we just did quite a bit in a little bit of time. Anybody have any questions?
You have some things cooked? Do you have any
Yep.
cookies?
I do.
See what they look like cooked?
Yeah. I don't have any burgers cooked, unfortunately. I ate them all, but I will show you my cookies. I could have been cooking them while we were talking, but that's just too much going on at once.
Yeah.
So these are my cookies.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, they come out really
That looks
nice.
good.
Yeah,
those
they're
do look good.
Yep, they're delicious. So they come together really well. You don't have to add any liquid. So I think, again, the secret is not to eat a banana that's not ripe. When I tried these with something that was not really ripe, they're not as tasty because they're not as sweet. And I do
Yeah.
I like sweet, just like a lot of people. So
Well, now I know what to do with my bananas because I can't eat just a plain banana once there's brown spots on them. So now I know what to do with them.
yeah, I usually take the peel off and chunk them up into little pieces and freeze my bananas that are ripe like that, so I
Mhm.
don't throw them away.
Oh,
You can add 'em
really?
Oh, yeah. And you can add them to smoothies. You can use them for all these recipes. You don't have to get fresh bananas. You can melt them and, defrost them into your oats or your cookie. The other great thing that I can't do tonight is make banana ice cream. You take frozen bananas and whip those up with some nut butter, and you have a delicious, creamy ice cream without any added sugar.
Oh, wow.
Really? Wow.
Oh, that's neat.
Huh.
Do it all the time. You can actually take a bunch and freeze it in like a mason jar. I did it the other night and I defrosted a little bit of it. It was just so good.
Wow.
Some cocoa powder,
sounds
make it chocolate. Yeah.
Real easy.
That's
Yeah.
neat.
Where can you get some of these ingredients? I mean, do you have to go to like Whole Foods or can you get some of these at Publix or?
Yeah, our stores are becoming more and more open to having all these things. I'd go to Costco and I can find a big bag of chia seeds for like $8. That's great. Walmart is where I got my almond flour, chia seeds, hemp seeds, flaxseed meal is at Walmart, Target. They all are carrying a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
The only thing that might be hard to find is nutritional yeast. Publix, if you ask them where it is, because I don't know where they're going to keep it, all the stores keep it in different places. This is at Trader Joe's. I think Publix has this now because people are buying it.
Okay.
I haven't seen it at Walmart or Target, but yeah, these
We have-
things, yeah,
We have that Sunseed Corporation in Cape Canaveral
okay.
Oh,
that has a
yeah.
lot of that stuff.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah, they've been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, I think,
And there's a
yeah,
place over in Rockledge that I went that's a big store that's really nice. I want to say it's off Murrell. I can't think, it was
Are you
hard to
thinking of
find.
Health Fair or Earth Fair, something like that?
oh, Earth Fair.
I think it closed.
It did.
And yeah, that may have been it.
Yeah, we had those too. They're supposed to be reopening in Orlando. I don't know about over there. I don't. They went
Oh,
under
that was
on
down in Vieira. They had one of those.
Oh, okay. Sprouts. I don't know if you have a Sprouts or a Trader Joe's.
No, my daughter in Naples has Sprouts.
Okay.
We don't have any of those things over here.
Okay. I know that's what Lauren was saying.
Do you live
That's
in Orlando?
It's unfortunate. I live outside of Orlando, Winter Park, Oviedo area, which we're very
Oh, okay.
fortunate. We have everything in a few mile radius, which is very much a blessing.
It is nice. My first job was Winter Park Hospital.
Oh, okay.
And I
Oh,
trained at Orange Memorial,
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. That's great. Were you a nurse?
lab tech.
Okay. Okay. That's wonderful.
That was back in the 60s before Disney when it was wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the before Disney, yes.
Yes,
Nice and quiet.
it wasn't quiet, but it was a
Oh.
lot of fun because the Air Force
Okay.
Base was there. We had two Air
Okay.
Force bases. And so it was hopping.
Oh, okay. You're talking about men.
Yes.
You're talking about pilots.
Yes,
Yeah, you're talking about the good days.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny.
I think we're being recorded, but
Okay.
I was gonna
That's
say
what
some
you say.
I was gonna say some stuff, but I won't.
We'll keep it PG.
Right, that's right.
Oh, heck.
Oh,
Well,
goodness.
ladies, thank you so much for letting me be your guest in Brevard County. If there's anything I can do for you all, I know Lauren and Christina have my email address, and I'm at Orlando Health, so happy to share
Oh.
anything else I can with you.
Thank you
This was
so
very
much,
good.
Nicole.
Yeah,
This is
My pleasure.
wonderful.
yeah,
now that
this,
we can,
this is very good. You know, I've been doing more cooking at home. Of course, going through chemo, my taste buds changed. And I had somebody tell me before I started chemo to stock up my freezer with some prepackaged meals because I wouldn't feel like cooking.
Mhm.
Well, after the second chemo, I couldn't eat anything prepackaged. My taste, it tasted like cardboard. It was
Oh,
terrible.
no.
So I started making casseroles, you know, my old mother's recipes and stuff.
okay.
So I'm learning how to recook again. So yeah, so these look like they were fairly easy to make and, you know,
Yeah.
didn't take a lot of special, you know, ingredients.
Yeah,
things
those
like
burgers
that.
look really good.
Yeah.
And Lauren is a fan of Rebecca Katz, who created books that talk about when you lose your taste buds from being cancer, how you have to have those 4 ingredients: fat, acid, salt, and sweet to make your taste buds come alive. The
Uh-huh.
only way to really get that is when you cook your own food. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're
Yeah,
doing
it,
that.
it worked out that, you know, I had chemo on Monday, so Sunday I'd make a big casserole and that'd last me for the 3 days. So now I'm
Great.
back cooking my own food. You know,
Wonderful.
now the sweets, I still have the sweet tooth. That didn't get affected.
I understand.
And
Oh,
Publix has such good stuff.
good.
Yes, yes, they do. Yeah, this was very interesting because I know I need to get away from, you know, the meats that I eat, but I'm also finding that after chemo, I used to eat a lot more beef. Now I'm eating more chicken and pork, and the beef doesn't sit as well with me. So this
Yeah.
is giving me some good alternatives. I'm
Right.
looking forward to getting copies of your recipes. They
Yeah.
all look delicious tonight.
Yeah. No problem. I think Christina has them, or
Okay.
tell me if you need them. I'll be happy to resend them. But yeah.
Yeah.
No, we have them. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you so much. I know you got to
you so-
run, so I
Yes.
Me too.
respect
Thank you,
your time.
ladies.
Thank
Have a
you.
So
wonderful night.
appreciate it.
Bye,
Enjoy.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, oh, let me stop recording. There we go.
What's mine?